Hey, Internet. Hope your Holy Week is going really well. And we're in Good Friday, an amazing time. So I want to I'm just shooting this just for you out there in YouTube land and on our church website as well. There's an old phrase that says, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. And that was probably written by somebody who had given someone a job to do. Said, hey, I need you to do this, and gave you the instructions, and it came back, and it was nothing like they were supposed to do. Or it could have been, this phrase could have come from someone who was given the instructions, who did the job well, but it wasn't exactly the way the boss wanted it done, and so they caught all kinds of flack for it. So it was just like, hey, if you want it done the way you want to do it, then you should probably be the one to do it. So it's a phrase that kind of comes out of frustration. It's a phrase that exists because people fail. And the reality is, hey, let's just face it, that I fail. And I know it's going to be bad news for you, but you fail as well. I mean, you've let people down. You've let yourself down. You've let the Lord, your God, down, right? He has called you to do things, and you just failed miserably because of two things: your intentions and your commitment level. It's just not what it needs to be. It's just not there. It's not. And I think that's why we have a hard time trusting God, because we know how we sometimes run when it comes to our commitments and when it comes to our intentions about things in life. And we certainly know how other people are. In fact, we are much more brutal with the people around us than we ever are on ourselves, right? But if you put those two together, it should be no surprise that it's very difficult for us to trust in God, because what we tend to do is gauge who God is based on how other people are. And that's not right, and we got to really work at that. And listen, by the way, that's why reading the Scripture is so important, because that's going to continually correct this. That's going to continually take our focus off of us and off of other people, and really off of us having to compare ourselves to other people, and puts it on who God is. How does He see us? How does He see our life? How is He directing our lives? Because once I start comparing, and once I start, especially comparing God to myself or others, I'm left with a very skewed, if not warped and totally twisted view of who God is and really how He is. All right? So, during our Good Friday services, we're going to be looking at the words from John. And this is from John's Gospel. So, again, what a great thing to do on this Easter week. Look at those last couple chapters of John. Look at everything that happened. Look at what Jesus said. Look at what He did. But one of the things I see in that is his intentions, His commitment. In fact, if you look at the whole of Scripture, you look at His commitment. Look at Isaiah 53, another great passage to look at during Good Friday, because you might be like, man, I know I'm supposed to do something special on Good Friday. It's Good Friday after all. And, I know maybe you're watching this, and that's cool. But going to church is really cool. And yet, sit the family down, or just take some time by yourself and read through all of Isaiah 53, chapter 53, because this is this description of what Jesus went through, and it's a long time. Before it ever happened, before Bethlehem ever happened, before the whole Christmas thing ever got rolling, God had this intention, right? He was committed to this plan. Look at what it says in Isaiah 53. I'll just read some of these passages. He was despised, rejected by men, a man of sorrows, familiar with suffering, like one from whom men hide their faces. He was despised, and we esteemed Him not. It says, surely He took up our infirmities, right? Our brokenness, our frailty, our busted up nature, right? He carried our sorrows, all of it, all our pain. Yet we considered Him stricken by God, smitten by Him, afflicted, pierced for our transgressions, right? For every one of my sins, He was, every every whip that went into him, every sword, right, every punch, every kick, every shove, every injustice that was done to him, right? He was crushed for all of my iniquities. And that means iniquities are another word for sins, another word for my evil, my wickedness, my having to have it my way. He was crushed for all of that. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him. And by his wounds, we are healed. Now, again, it sounds like this would be, he's talking after Jesus died and rose, right? It almost sounds like, maybe a couple years after, maybe somebody's Easter sermon or Good Friday sermon. But it's not. It's hundreds, right? It's hundreds of years before. And it gets the truth about us, too, right? Verse 6, we like sheep have gone astray. All of us, we all like sheep have gone astray. Each of us turned to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him, on his servant, on his Jesus, with intention, with total and utter commitment, well before it ever became time for him to endure all of that. This was the plan. This was the dialed-in commitment. It's so amazing that he's even describing it before it happens. Think about that. Think about all that was. In verse 10, it says, "Yet it was the Lord's will to crush him and to cause him to suffer. Though the Lord makes his life a guilt offering, he will see his offspring and prolong his days, and the will of the Lord will prosper in his hand." And what he's saying is, look, he's going to suffer, he's going to die. This is God's will. That's why Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. And he says, look, I don't, nobody takes my life from me. I willingly lay it down, and I'll take it up again. In other words, this is the plan. We run into this in Mark 8, very important passage. This is where Peter confesses that Jesus is the Christ. He's the Son of the living God. Jesus had asked them, "Who do people say that I am?" And he's like, he hits it out of the park. I mean, he scores the touchdown with the 2-point conversion, man. I mean, it's just awesome. He is killing it. But Jesus says, this didn't come from you. That truth came from God himself. Because when Jesus began to unpack this, then Peter's like, Because Jesus says in Mark 8, verse 31, it says, he began to teach them. And there's a very important word in here I want you to see. And it kind of shows us what this intention and this commitment was all about. It said that he began to teach them that the Son of Man, that's him, that Jesus must suffer. It is necessary. It's not an option. It's not like, hey, it'd be kind of cool if he could suffer many things. Wouldn't it be awesome? Or no, it's going. He must suffer many things, be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, the people that should know better, that should be kind of connected to and getting what he was about. And he's going to, and then again, he says the word again, and that he must be killed. Just let that sink in. He must suffer beatings. I mean, I watched the Passion of the Christ last night, and it's still buzzing in my heart, in my mind, in my soul. The savage brutality. The scriptures don't fill in a lot of the blanks in there. Because if you connect the physical with what he's going on, as he takes on the full weight of my sin, my guilt, your shame, my guilt, I mean, all of it, it all just sort of gang tackles him, and it's just being piled on and piled on and piled on and piled on. And he's saying, look, this must happen. He's saying, look, I must be killed. And after 3 days, rise again. And Peter begins to rebuke him. And it's the same word that Jesus used when he cast out demons. He sort of cast Jesus aside and said, no way. Kind of like, what are you, nuts? Like, this isn't the plan. Like I've heard my whole life that you're supposed to triumph and you're supposed to ride in on the white steed and just totally destroy Rome and kick them all out and die. That's not part of the plan, but it was part of God's plan, part of his intention, part of his commitment to us. And Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. You have in mind the things of, you don't have in mind the things of God. You have in mind the things of men. That's what you're thinking about. You're thinking about you. You're thinking about your skin. You're thinking about this. You're not thinking bigger. You're not thinking the way God thinks. Because God's saying, look, this has to happen this way. The price has to be paid, and that's what he did. He had that as his intention for us. His intention. Every time he was beaten, every time he was whipped, every time he was called a name and mocked and then crucified, which was probably the most barbaric way to kill someone, maximizing the suffering, maximizing the agony. You literally sort of suffocated as your arms kind of closed in. It's terrible. It's terrible. But he was innocent. This was a payment that was mine. It was yours. Should have been ours. See, and this wasn't like he tried to be good and tried to fix it and it didn't work, so we had to go to the cross. This wasn't plan B. This was the plan all along, right? Again, go back to that Isaiah 53. Go back and read it. In fact, go back to the beginning, to Genesis, where God says, he will strike your heel, but you will crush his head. He's talking about the serpent. He's telling the serpent, look, dude, you're one of her offspring, right? One of Eve's offspring. His name is, let's call him Jesus, right? This is what's going to happen. He calls it right at the beginning. He's saying, look, your days are numbered from right from this get-go. And I love it in the, and again, Mel Gibson in The Passion of the Christ tries to tie this in at the very beginning of the movie when Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane and he's just overcome with the pain of all of this and the enormity of all of this. And the devil sends a snake, right? The serpent comes to him as he's face down and he's sort of overwhelmed. And Jesus gets up. The Father's kind of filled him with that resolve. He just stomps on that snake's head. And it's like, yeah, here we go. Now, I know that didn't, probably actually happen, but I love the tie-in because that's exactly what he did. He crushed the head of evil, the head of sin, the head of death, crushed it as he died there, crushed it as he said, it is finished. See, and the big thing is that it's for you. Even though our intentions aren't what they should be, even though our commitments aren't what they should be, and yet what Jesus says is that because he suffered and died, and because he paid the price, we're God's children, right? We're his people. And that means that our intentions can be different. Our motivations, our commitments can be different. Now again, they're never going to be perfect. See, but now they're motivated by them being an expression of this love that God has for us, an expression of his intentions, of his commitments. We want that to rise in people's minds when they see us interact and when they see us do right by other people and love them, because we're loving as we've been loved. We're forgiving as we've been forgiven. And when we do that, we shine our light. Even on this dark day, man, we shine our light of Jesus. And so I pray that you have just a great day. Just take some time, get into Isaiah 53. Read this Mark 8 passage again. It's verse 31 there. Just some things. Read again that last couple chapters of John. And just let it sink in. Just keep saying to yourself, this was for me. He did this for me. He did this to set me free. This is how much he loves me. And maybe find someone else to share that with, okay? All right, take care. Have a blessed Good Friday and a blessed Easter, right? Because he is risen. Because we know that's how the story just keeps going, right? That he comes out of that tomb. And I love, again, in the Passion of the Christ, right? Jesus, the last time you saw him, he was bloody beyond belief. I mean, you could barely recognize it's him. And now it's like, wow, that's the Jesus that we saw in all the flashbacks when he wasn't beaten up and when he was just looked awesome. And you see the holes in his hands, and you know it's him. What an amazing story, right? So let's just take it in, all right? We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.